Hello, good evening, and welcome to Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action in Super League basketball this week. Before we get into it, Dave, I just wanted to take a moment to mark the untimely passing of Dave Lavinier. I didn't really know Dave, just sort of knew of him. He's one of those life of basketball people that you come across, a guy who dedicated himself particularly to the next generation of players, found in East Side Eagles in East London, and obviously came to national prominence as the assistant coach with first Mark Clark and then Stella Kaltzedu, winning 10 trophies at the Lions. Our audience will doubtless remember him as one of the voices of the Surrey 89ers and indeed the London Lions on the DAZN coverage. And even in that, you could see his passion for developing and coaching in the way he described things. It was always framed through a coach's view and a teacher's view. So, on behalf of Dave and myself, I'd like to offer our condolences to his wife Jude, his children Nicole and Andre, and all those who knew and loved him and are mourning his loss right now. Now, what we would normally like to do is honor his memory by transitioning into some basketball, and we will transition into basketball. But first of all, we need to continue the theme a bit with some more rather depressing news. I'm sure our listeners and viewers at home already know the background, but it bears reading out again. So I'm going to read it out. On Tuesday, I was just about to do a Eurocup, actually, Eurocup game, when I saw the statement from the FIBA Taskforce into British basketball. And it reads as follows. Following a comprehensive review of the situation, including interviews and meetings with basketball stakeholders, the task force has submitted its recommendations to FIBA Executive Committee, which today decided as follows. One, to temporarily suspend the British Basketball Federation's authority to license or recognise national men's competitions and to field a men's national team in FIBA senior competitions, pending resolution of the current governance issues. Two, to authorize the task force to engage directly with basketball stakeholders and the UK government to explore and propose an interim operational framework for top tier men's national competitions. These measures aim to restore regulatory integrity and promote sustainable governance of men's basketball in Great Britain as soon as possible. And obviously, the next day, the BBF put out a statement confirming that the home game against Lithuania and the away trip to Iceland in the November window would not go ahead. Dave, as somebody who spent my whole life watching basketball, this is a complete and utter shit show, isn't it?
Um, it's beyond that, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if you can throw enough um, negative adjectives at it. I mean, what has happened is that we are the only team, as I'm aware of at the moment, other than probably Russia, um, who isn't allowed to field a team in national competition. And it's men still, and I appreciate the other things that they can still do. They can still do 3v3, and the women's team isn't impacted. With all due respect, I don't care. The bottom line is that you have one function, which is to get your national teams on the court. That's the only purpose of the British Basketball Federation, from my perspective, because we have Basketball England, Basketball Scotland, Basketball Wales to do all the other things,
Mm.
and they've utterly failed, and basically it demonstrated a failure of governance so severe that the only, I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, they hadn't even managed to sell tickets or even announce the game for Lithuania
Mm.
yet. It's only 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
in the announcement that it wasn't going to happen, they told us it was going to be in London, which we
yeah,
hadn't known until that point.
so I mean, that's bad enough to start with. And I had a bit of a rant about that last week.
Mm.
Um, but the best way of dealing with this is to read. I'm afraid what we have to do in all these things, rather than just saying, "Oh, well, woe is us, this is awful," is we have to try and read between the lines,
Mm.
because this is a statement which is made for a specific reason. And the statement talked specifically about the lack of regulatory governance, the failure of governance in this country.
Mm.
Um, that is nailing it specifically um, at the feet of the BBF,
Mm.
because they are the governors. They are the ones who impose that governance. The task force has come in and has clearly had a mandate to listen to what was going on and probably to read the relevant documents and to establish how to take things forward. And the only real sanction that they have, in reality, is the suspension of teams from national competition and the
Mm,
suspension of the governing body. And that is but that is exactly what they have done. Now, reading between the lines, what that means is they've took one look at the ongoing debacle with the court case and with Glickman and thought, what are you doing?
mm,
Glickman is known to European basketball, not in a good way.
mm,
So FIBA Taskforce isn't going to be silent in relation to knowing what's going on with him. But beyond that, of course, you have to remember what the structure of the Glickman proposal was in relation to mini tournaments here and there,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
very few home games, basically circusizing basketball, if I can
Mm,
put it that, use that as a word, um, making it entirely different to the sport in every other country in Europe. And I can just imagine someone like Jorge Garbajosa having a look at that and thinking, what is this?
mm,
What are you suggesting? One home game and we're going to have special tournaments over this, that, and the other. It was just a nonsensical structure that that's been put on. So I imagine that rather tipped them off. The fact that they know about Glickman tipped them off as well. And then I imagine that they had some home truth conversations and basically um, formed the view that the association had failed. And a day before they come out with this, or 2 days before they come out with this, by coincidence, the chairman resigns for personal reasons.
mm,
I mean, what kind of idiots do they think we are,
mm,
man? And he's say, "Oh, we've," and last week you and I were very skeptical of the suggestion that it was personal reasons, but ultimately, people have their own space, and people,
yeah.
don't wish ill on anybody, even if they've made a holics of their job. But if you're asking me to legitimately believe that, that personal after 3 years, after 2 years of absolute chaos, that personal reasons force you to resign the day before your federation is suspended,
Yeah.
then I'm afraid you're going to have to give me a little bit more information than that,
Mm,
to have me give that any credence at all as somebody whose day-to-day job is judging evidence.
yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't ring true. And then I'm afraid, and so that has been a level of kind of misdirection, which the BBF have basically demonstrated over the past 9 months in relation to everything that they've done. We'll say one thing, but we don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be either the entire truth or even necessarily based in truth. But then we had a statement from the interim chair, who's a lady by the name of Grace Jacker, who I don't know, I understand is a long-term basketball volunteer, who's been, or certainly a long-term committee member at the very least, who is obviously has been part of the failure, but is now the interim chair. And that statement read the following day. Our immediate priority is to continue working with key stakeholders to maintain stability while contributing constructively to the process with
Mm.
FIBA.
Maintain stability.
I mean, you know, firstly, if you've got nothing to say, say nothing. I have the
Mm,
benefit of a wife who's in communications, so and also obviously I'm married, so if you've got nothing to say, say nothing. Absolutely, but what a meaningless, jumbled word salad of crap.
mm,
Your immediate priority is to get a team on the court.
mm,
No, our immediate priority is to continue working with key stakeholders to maintain stability, which is basically what you've put a pile of dynamite under and
mm,
fired an angry bird at, while contributing constructively to the process with FIBA.
mm,
That's not an immediate priority. That's a long-term goal.
mm,
This is how these people are still in place is beyond me. How they have the gall and the guts to kind of the chutzpah not to think, oh well, we'll just shuffle somebody else into the next chair and keep going. Now, I appreciate the government can't really do much about it because government interference in sport is a no-no as far as FIBA are concerned.
mm,
So you've got to be very careful about that. And I'm less critical of the politician who produced a statement saying something similar because I think they have to be a little bit more careful. But what I want to know is on what the problem that's been established here is that they gave Glickman a license to an exclusive running of the basketball league in this country when they did have the power to do that. And the whole board did that. The whole board did that. They offered, they signed up to something they didn't have the power to sign up for. They're now being sued because of it. On what basis is any of their positions tenable, Dan?
Mm.
On what basis?
Well,
Basis
if
do
I,
they believe? Do they even believe? On what basis do they have the chutzpah to say, we can just keep going? The answer
yeah,
has to be you go out as a group, you fall on your sword,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the government can then put something else in place.
I mean, if I play devil's advocate, I could maybe make the case that actually you can't just all resign en masse and have nobody. So therefore, you have to do something in until you the bridge to whatever is next. But you're right. The reality is the we've seen in the past statement come out about unanimous, everybody agrees, blah blah blah. Well, if you unanimously got yourself to a position where your entire raison d'etre has been taken away from you, then you unanimously have to go as far as I can see. I was also intrigued because the statement from FIBA didn't make it blatantly clear that the games weren't being played in November. It just said, what's the word?
International competition.
Yeah, until the governance issues can be resolved,
Yeah.
pending resolution. It was actually the BBF who came out and said the games aren't being played, and I did wonder actually, could we not get a quicker resolution than that? What we on? We're admittedly late October, so but we're still over a month away
Which
from.
is where I came in relation to the fact that they haven't even started selling tickets. Maybe it's
Yeah, yeah. But if there was ever a game that you had to sell tickets at short notice for, in any size venue you want in this country, Lithuania is the
it
game where you
is.
would be able to shift the ticket. So I was a little bit surprised to read that because I would have thought if I was my main priority would be how on earth do we make sure this game goes ahead because how much money would they make out of that? They could fund the program for the next 6 months, 12 months or something.
Absolutely, but against that, again, this is where we have to remember the inadequacy of the organisation, the fact that it has no paid staff, and the fact
Mm,
that the volunteers who are sitting around the table appear to be people who enjoy sitting around the table as opposed to actually accomplishing much. The people who are doing the groundwork on the board.
mm.
You know, the people who Mark Stewart talked about in the pre-game in
Yeah,
Eurobasket,
yeah, yeah,
not on the
yeah.
board. He didn't talk about any of the people on the board. Okay, they're pushing their pens around, but the reality is you have to remember look, to be utterly blunt, the national team program has been bailed out by Newcastle for the past
Yeah,
2 months,
yeah.
right? It's been bailed out by Paul, who probably got something out of it as well. So I'm not saying it's entirely um, without benefit to them. It's not entirely on the charitable basis. But the reality is Newcastle have organised the hotels, organised the accommodation, organised the food, got the players to and from the venues, got the court done. Primarily because it's a FIBA approved venue because it's got enough space so they can have that. There's not that many of them in this country now.
Mm,
And secondly, because it was something that that Paul Blake's history in the basketball is that he's a life head. Like
mm,
Dave, you mentioned that he was going to
mm,
support it if ever he could. And now I can't conceive of any situation where they can realistically ask Newcastle to bail them out to host the game when they've suspended them from when they're not a regulated club,
mm,
which means in place the game would have to be run independently. That means you have to have somebody who's got an experience of capability of all the mechanics of running an event. I don't think any of them have got any clue,
mm,
to be blunt. And that's part of the problem with the whole grant thing, without understanding the extent that the professional clubs actually have a clue as to filling gyms, filling arenas for finals, and running events.
mm,
And that's why I think nothing had happened. And that's why I think they'd be quite, it's almost a pressure off them to cancel the game, which again is as significant a admission of failure as you will ever get.
mm,
It's disqualifying. Um, but you're right. Of course, that's what I say. The first thing has to be, how do we get a team on the floor? What do we do? And just for people who are unsure about this, the clue is in the question. The clue is in the statement from FIBA. What they
mm,
have to do is very, very straightforward, right?
mm,
They have to confirm that they recognise the SLB, right? They recognise the SLB, then all the governance issues go away
mm.
because that's the only thing that is the governance issue at the moment. The league is
Well,
unrecognised.
I suspect. that actually they'd want to see a different board of governors in all of that.
Well, FIBA might.
Yeah, FIBA.
I'm
Yeah,
sure. I'm sure that that
yeah,
might be
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
But in relation to dealing with the specific governance quote marks issues
Mm,
which are preventing us from fulfilling that fixture, right? If they recognise the league and come to a détente, some form of détente in relation to the legal action with SLB, then that's it. That's all we're talking about here because women's basketball isn't involved. Why? Because the women's SLB is recognised for
mm,
some reason. The men's isn't, but the women's is. Make sense of that on any logical basis.
mm,
Good luck arguing about that in court as
yeah,
well, BBF. What the British Championship basketball again?
mm,
That's recognised. It's run independently. It's not it's not run any different way to the SLB. You know, so they could do that. And the only thing of potentially preventing them doing that, of course, is the fact that they've promised Mr. Glickman that they won't
mm,
in a legal in a license that Chris Grant has provided to them. And if that is the case, and that's my suspicion, that basically they can't recognise it because to be doing that, then get sued by Glickman.
mm,
They're stuck right in the middle of it,
yeah,
which is why their entire position is untenable. And here's the other thing, Dan. There's an ongoing court case, an ongoing high court case. Okay, they don't sit still. Those cases, you have
no,
to serve pleadings, serve defences, serve more documents all the time. Judge will be monitoring it all the way. Okay, somebody has to give instructions to the BBF lawyers,
yeah,
right? Somebody has to say this is our case. Up until this point, it's pretty clear it's been Chris Grant. He's the one who's been talked about. He is not there anymore. Okay, so who is going to give those instructions to those lawyers as to this is the way that we wish to proceed in relation to the claim against us and our counterclaim?
mm,
None of them have a clue, Dan. They don't know. I put it on Twitter on Blue Sky now. Probably being a bit dismissive and maybe a little bit unfair, but I basically said they'll be out of the depth in the puddle,
mm,
underwater. And if you're in that situation, don't make it worse. Get out, let the government step in, and if there's a vacuum, the government will have to fill it, and at least give us an opportunity. Obviously, we can't control who the government fill it with, but at the very least, give the government opportunity to reset everything, because
yeah,
that's what FIBA want. You're right
yeah,
about change of governance. That's what they want. They want the regularization of the SLB and recognition of the SLB, and they want a change of personality at the top.
mm,
And let's be quite clear about this. Whatever is in Mrs. Jacka's statement, the reality is that the FIBA task force came in and found 100% on the side of the SLB
mm,
because they could, 100% on the side of the SLB, and they basically formed the view that it's not the clubs that are the problem here, it's a federation. Why do we say that? Because we're closing, but because we're saying the federation has to shut down.
mm,
And for all the word salad in the world, if you're part of that failure, then you move on and you let somebody else try and solve it.
mm, yeah.
Well,
So,
and after
the,
after it's really jarring because you've started with words which I absolutely endorse in relation to Dave. I've never met him, but I've read about him and I understand. And to be frank, everybody knows somebody like him in
mm,
relation to who's a lifer who does it for the love of it and does it to promote the sport without actually seeking to gain political office and without seeking to advance himself. He's seeking to advance all the kids that he's worked with a
mhm,
genuine enthusiasm for what he's done. And then we have to move on to the people, to people who are, if some of those kids that Dave will have worked at Barking and in London, who now are now being deprived of the opportunity to play for their country because we have people who have ascended to those positions who frankly aren't capable and should never have been there. How desperately sad is that?
mm. It is indeed, and I suspect we'll return to this.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully in the not too distant future. Hopefully, there's a resolution in a positive, or at least steps towards a resolution in a positive way in a relatively short order. Because we can't. I mean, who knows what they're going to do with the two games? I mean, they're never going to find a window of opportunity to play them again, I suspect. So I would imagine we end up forfeiting both of them. That damages us going forward in terms of A, qualification, and B, the ramifications of losing
Points.
and
Yeah.
pots and
Uh,
coefficients and all of that. And you know, how often are you going to get Lithuania at home? The probably the best money earner you've got in Europe. I can't think of a team that would be better supported in this country
Certainly, I
than
mean, certainly
Lithuania.
London. I mean, gee, when Latvia were in Newcastle, it was bonkers.
Yeah, yeah.
Lithuania is like Latvia times four, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did Žalgiris against London Towers in Crystal Palace on a Wednesday evening 20 something years ago, 25 years ago probably. It was the greatest atmosphere I've ever commentated in, and there was about 50 London Towers fans in the building,
Mm.
and the place was standing room only, and they were queuing outside at 4 o'clock for an 8 o'clock game.
So basically, what we're saying is that FIBA have come in and basically agreed with my summation of last week, which is that our governing federation is the brewery and they can't
Mm,
run this up.
yeah, yeah.
That's yeah, it is just mind-boggling,
Mm,
mind-bogglingly bad. And what? And sorry, one more thing. What we've talked a lot about the kind of the politicians. This what does this say to the players? What does it say
yeah.
to Dan Clark, to Mark Stuttle, to Andreas Kapoulis, to Jackson, to all the guys, all the people in the back room of the GB party who sweated blood over the summer,
Mm,
and now they can't even get them on the court.
mm,
What does that say to them? You know, and to be frank, Dan, if if having this news having come out, if Chris Grant had gone, if everybody had done a kind of a Gary Lineker off match of the day and said, yeah, okay, if he's going, we're going,
mm,
I would have so much more respect for them all.
yeah.
So much more respect for them all to say, okay, we've failed here. Let the government put somebody else in place to do it. But the fact that we have this mentality in this country of recycling civil servants and then civil servants and volunteers clinging on in positions that they're manifestly unsuited to um to be part of in unwieldy boards of 12 people which really accomplish nothing. It's like a 1950s football club.
Mm,
We're running it in the dark ages.
mm,
And when people get a little bit of power, sometimes they're reluctant to pass it up. And it's very difficult to remove them. And that's where we're at.
mm. It is indeed. Should we talk some basketball?
No, because this is sadder.
Well, we'll start in East Kilbride if you like.
Okay.
Friday night, Caledonia Gladiators 91, Bristol Flyers 93. A slightly frenetic start, I thought. Holden and the Andersons hitting threes. Bristol had a 16-8 lead, but Caledonia with a 13-2 run made it 21-18.
Yeah, I get the feeling there's going to be quite a few up and down games in
Mm.
Caledonia this year in East
Yeah.
Right. Um, Bristol are a really good offensive machine. And kind of the apocalyptic sign is when Cam Holden starts hitting threes early.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, what are we going to give up now? I don't think Caledonia are quite where they need to be in their defense, where they actually figured out what they were meant to be giving up because they were giving up most things. And, Joe Anderson went off in this game, that 26 points on 14 shots,
Mm,
which is not good because, that's kind of what he does, you can, and he's clearly a guy who can shoot the ball, but not great at creating his own shot. But if you don't guard him the way you're meant to, he's going to light you up, and he did. But similarly, they are offensively, Caledonia are offensively really powerful.
mm,
They have a lot of firepower, and in this game they didn't even shoot the ball particularly well, but they still put up 91,
mm,
and could have put up a few more. So yeah, it was one of those. I watched it after I watched the Leicester Newcastle game. It was defensively deficient, I think I would say.
mm,
I hate to be, obviously look at the negatives. They have some. I like Bristol's offense. I really do. The ball pops. That they're all kind of comfortable. They get the ball to where it needs to go to. If they're stuck a little bit in the screen and roll, they'll throw the ball to Holden or Brody in the post. Um, Joachim didn't have much of a game in this game, but he's still there, and there's not much unnecessary dribbling goes on in that offense, and because of that, they get good shots, and they know the shots are meant to take. Um, Caledonia, their offense is a little bit streakier. They still have a fight. I mean, every week I seem to talk about it, but they have a total issue. He played 12 minutes in this game. He was sort of one. You know, Ragsdale came off the bench. He had 22 points in 25 minutes and made five threes. And there is going to be a time whereby Johnny's going to have to look at seeing if he has to bring Ragsdale into the starting lineup. Because by not starting somebody, you limit the minutes.
Mm.
You know, if he doesn't start the first quarter, he doesn't start the third quarter. If he's not coming in until the 4 minute mark in each quarter,
You
the
might
most,
hamper the offense off the bench if you
well, he might do,
too
but the
much.
most minute, but the point is the most minutes he can play is 28 minutes in the game.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, and that's fine if you're Charles Smith and you're 39-year-old and you're coming
yeah,
into
yeah,
basketball off the
yeah.
court. But he's probably a substantial, one of the most significant offensive threats. And I don't know if I would restrict him that way. You can still bring him out early and maybe do two sub pattern or something like that to sort
Mm,
it out. But when you lose that many minutes from him, and basically, Toto might benefit from coming off the bench and being the energy guy,
mm,
plays against the bench. I'm not sure he's helping them at starting and playing 12 or 13 minutes, and then somebody else is sitting down. So that's a potential move they could make. They're still defensively deficient because if Ragsdale plays the three, then obviously I see Holland as a skilled offensive point guard. I'm not sure about his defense. He talks a little bit too much for me at the moment. Just a little bit too much. I'd like to, win a few games first, after making a shot on that type of thing. Obviously, Wright and Ragsdale are real, and Spielman are three nail lights out shooters, and then Allen's a great scorer. So that's a really good offensive five.
mm.
And you have some, Fraser off the bench as well, and a couple of others. But the defensively, not you wouldn't put any. There's no Prince on us.
No,
No
no.
one down there to stop it. So yeah, so interesting. I mean, it was a fun game to watch, but
Yeah,
at the end of the
pretty.
second quarter, didn't it? Really?
Yeah, pretty even to towards halftime, and then flies with the last 8 points of the first half, a 10-5 start to the second half to lead 53-65, and round about that time, 3 minutes into the third quarter, Allen called for an offensive foul. Holden snatched the ball away from him to get it back. It's hard to see quite what happened after that, but there's obviously a bit of chatter or something between them, a double technical, and that's important because it's Holden's third, but it's Allen's fourth because of the offensive foul.
Yeah, my view on double technicals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This actually physically touching each other, or whatever. Then if you don't know who started it,
Mm,
you give the technical should be for the guy who started it, the agitator. And only if the other guy actually comes in and physically makes contact or does something to escalate, if I can put it that way, should they get a technical.
mm,
Refs are far too comfortable giving out double technicals. You've got to work out who started it.
mm.
And because a player who starts it to such a degree that it's worthy of a technical is going to get a reaction from somebody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So if Holden slapped the ball out of his hands, and I don't know if he did, I don't know who it was. I don't know.
I
So
thought he just took it out of his hands.
if Holman took the ball out of his hands, and if the ref says that was a
Mm,
reasonable thing to do, and then Allen started it, well, you give Allen the technical. If
mm,
the ref thinks that was an unreasonable thing to do, and it was an agitated move, then you give Holden the technical.
mm,
You just give them both in the technicals, just like, oh, we're not sure. Well, don't do it because it impacts the game. Um, but there's something to be said that Caledonia are better playing small.
mm,
It really is. Because Williams came in and gave them some decent minutes. And basically Bristol only have one big guy, one
mm.
true big guy, and that's Brody. Everybody else is McCormack last year, you'd have thought was a four-man at best, wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and he's probably, he could probably play the three as well, and McCormack even then. So they only really have one big guy. So, and playing small does allow them to be a little bit, I think, a little bit more energetic defensively.
Mm.
And obviously it makes them more threatening offensively at times if they're knocking down their shots, and Ragsdale started knocking down shots.
Then they hit 9 in a row to cut it to three, and in the fourth quarter, they'd leveled the scores at 81-81. Flyers then scored the next 7 points to lead 88-81 with 3 minutes to play. And in that spell, with about 4 minutes to go, Allen got subbed out of the game after a turnover. Looked to have a little bit of a strop on his way out, and he had a very
Well,
pouty face on the bench. He never
this is
returned after that.
this is the ongoing story because the ongoing issue that Johnny has. He's a dominant. offensive player, but he becomes a kind of a centrifugal force. Everything has to operate around him. And there is evidence, and this is what coaches get paid for,
Mm,
ultimately, but there is kind of evidence to suggest that, they may be as good or if not better at certain times when he's not on the court.
mm,
So, from a coaching perspective, the first three quarters is all about figuring out who's going to be on court at the end in a close game.
mm,
Because as well as watching what's happening in the game and calling plays, you're also assessing your own players. Who's doing what they're meant to do? Who's following the scouting report? Who's assisting us? And it's not just at one end; it's at both ends.
mm,
And fans always watch the ball, so fans always watch the offense. That's the reality of it. Coaches are generally looking at the defense because they know what their players can do offensively. So they're trying to figure out how do we get stops, and then maybe where do we need to throw the ball to get a mismatch. Okay. And Johnny made a relatively, I think, a pretty brave decision, to be fair, because no one's going to complain if he keeps him in there,
mm,
right? But you have to remember the very first game of the season against Newcastle, he was in the game and they didn't score a field goal the last 7 minutes. And Newcastle
mm,
came back from a 12-point deficit and won in overtime. And the ball got sticky with Kevin Allen then. So he made that decision, bold decision, sit him down. He brought Williams in and Spielman in and basically the more quicker, more mobile team. And I think that I understand why he did that because they needed stops and they weren't getting them. And it also allows the game to be a little bit quicker. And of course, they did put up a little bit of an effort at the end.
Yeah, so it's still 88, 81, 88 with 100 seconds to go. I'll just run through the last few scores. Holland with a floater, 133 to go, 83, 88. Holden then with the three pushed it back to 8. It looked over at that point. One
Yeah,
minute 16
was
to go.
your throat cutting shot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
83, 91. 105 to go right with the spin move to the basket, cut it to 6. Brody then turned it over. Um, Wright with 50.8 seconds to go, fouled in transition, goes 1 for 2 from the free throws, but gets his own rebound. So a reverse and one for
There's
him.
two things. I mean, the two things just about those players. One, Brody has a little bit too much irrational confidence for my liking. He likes a look away pass.
Mm,
I've seen 3 or 4 of them already, and at
yeah,
6 foot,
yeah.
I
Or
prefer you just
through the legs and
through the legs,
yeah,
that
yeah.
type of stuff. That's all well and good, but in a 6 point game with a minute to go, you're giving the big guy the ball to get the ball to your point guard,
Mm,
not to try and throw the ball at the court and turn it over. So there's a bit of irrational confidence, which I think just needs to be knocked out of him. He's been quite effective. He's actually been better the last couple of games, and probably could be one of the better big men in the league. But you can't be turning the ball over like that. Secondly, bog standard. Cameron Holden is the man. He has to go and box out the shooter
mm,
on the foul shot. He went to box out. He went to kind of sandwich the big guy under the rim instead. Long rebound. Ethan Wright gets it, makes a layup.
mm,
It's fun. Ultimately, it's fundamental. People might think, what a play by Ethan Wright, but no, that's Cameron Holden's job. Cameron Holden has to block out the shooter. He's the third guy on the foul line, and he went for something. He made an instinctive read to go somewhere else. But there's a reason that you're coached to do it the way that you do it.
mm,
It's
mm,
because that type of stuff happens. And Ethan Wright is actually probably one of the. If you had to ask me about guys in the league who would be capable of getting their own rebound from a foul shot, Ethan Wright would be quite high up that list
mm,
because
mm.
he's done it. I think he may have done it a couple of times before where he's been sneaky and kind of chased a foul shot rebound and got it. Um,
So it's at 88-91 with 48.5 seconds to go. Flyers run the clock, and then Holden turned the ball over trying to find McCormack. And in transition, Joachim gave Wright a little taste of his own medicine with a tremendous block.
yeah, I mean that was two things about that. They played their offense for about 37.5 minutes was great in this game, Bristol. And then, they went away from, I mean, Holden on the perimeter with McCormack in the post is not where you should be going with 35 seconds to go.
Mm,
Anderson's got 26 points in the game. He's 10 of 14. You've got to be running your screen and roll, or you've got to be putting Cameron Holden in the post, but they just got a bit mixed up in relation to what you're doing. I think you saw it on Andreas's face at the end of the game when he was shaking hands. He had that look of, my God, thank God.
mm.
We did everything we could to lose that game in the last minute and a half, and we managed to get out with a win. A kind of resigned victory look.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, phew, whatever, but we got to get better than that. Um, the second thing is, I mean, for those who want to look at transition defense, you watch Joachim's feet on that play.
Mm,
because he measures right, and he doesn't just kind of stand there flat-footed and jump and block it. He actually has two or three tiny little fast feet steps, almost ladder training steps, to kind of set himself up for the timing to jump off one foot because he needs to jump off one foot because Ethan Wright is athletic to jump off one foot to meet Ethan Wright's timing on the shot.
Mm,
A fantastic play, and then that's for a guy who could have been sulking because he's only got 4 points in the game.
mm,
So sometimes guys who play offense kind of, if the offense isn't going, their defense isn't where it needs to be. Well, he's obviously not one of those guys. So that's a major boost for Bristol. You make a play like that, it's a game-changing, game-winning play.
mm. It also discombobulated Gladiators because they forgot to foul initially, and that allowed Bristol to run some clock, got it down to 10.7. Anderson goes 1 for 2, 88-92. And then they commit a foul, but it was only the team fourth. Ragsdale banked in a three with 3.2 seconds to go.
Then there's just no in the world Ragsdale touches that
Mm,
basket. I'm
mm,
sorry, like
mm,
they're throwing it in from the inbounds. There's no, if I'm on the bench, there's just no way in the world well, I see if I'm on the bench, that would be the message you would be communicating to the players. Whether the players could stop it's another matter,
mm,
but it would be like, no, not him, because
mm,
he banked it in, but even so, not him.
mm,
He's a shot maker.
mm. They advanced the ball as a foul. Joachim goes 1 for 2, but he missed the second, so it's a live ball with
Yeah.
2.6 seconds to go. So Wright didn't even get to the halfway line, heaved one up and it missed.
Yeah, probably in terms of good miss, unless Wright makes a 70-footer.
Mm.
A bad miss if he did make a 70-footer. But I think you'd probably live with those odds. Bristol are furthest on. I mean, they played a couple of European games as well, which has helped them. They've had quite a busy schedule, but they've got a decent, they've got a good chemistry about them. Um, and a good pattern of generating offense, which you like. Not certain as to the defense at this point. Obviously, they don't have a Thomas Edwards or someone like that who's kind of was a stopper in previous years. Um, but if you're going to get involved in the running in a shootout with Bristol, I don't think you're going to win.
Mm,
So that might be kind of what they look into over the course of the season. Caledonia, yeah, they just got to figure out a way of who their lineup is. They got to either make sure that Alan is. They played a bit of zone at times when they were struggling to get stops, but the zone wasn't much better. There was one time I think they just threw it into the low post and guy kicked it out to the top, and Joe Anderson stood there catching and shooting like it's a foul shot.
mm,
So and technically, probably Fag Bentley is one of the biggest defensive weapons, but he's struggling to stay on the court offensively. And it gets harder because I think they've got to play London twice as well. So, more than anything, obviously, they got to find a way of sticking or twisting with Alan.
mm,
Either he's the guy or he's not the guy, and if he's not the guy, if he's not going to be the guy at the end of games, he has to buy into that, or they have to find some way of dealing with it.
mm. Ragsdale 22 points, 5 of 10 from 3-point range. Wright 19, Holland 18 points and 8 assists. The rest of the team, other than Ragsdale, were 4 of 21 for 3.
Mm.
Joe Anderson, 26 points. You mentioned the 10 of 14. He was 5 of 7 inside and 5 of 7 outside the arc. Brody with 16 points and 8 rebounds. Zach Anderson and Holden, 14 points, combined 9 for 16 between those two.
I mean, you look at Joe Anderson, you wouldn't assume that he would be 5 of 7 from inside the arc, would you?
No.
No, but he's shifty. And the skill he has is to know where he gets his shots from and
Mm,
know where the spacing is, which allows him to get to the rim, and to make the right pass and at the right time. So sometimes it's not about how high you can jump.
mm. I've pushed it down the road as far as I can for you, Dave. Let's go. Leicester Riders 91, Newcastle Eagles 77. Leicester brought in Don Carey Jr. and Aaron Menzies this week. Newcastle replaced Brett Reed with Dion Hammond. He was there, but he was in his sliders, not available to play yet. Obviously, they also updated the Josh Ward Hibbert injury during the week. He's out for another couple of months. Darius was going through some pre-game workouts, but still not ready to play. So Eagles only had 8 men dressed for this game. My stat for this game coming in, Dave, was
I
with the
heard it. Yeah.
combined record of 2-6. It was the lowest combined win percentage between Leicester and Newcastle since the 21st of November 2003, when they were combined 4 and 12. They'd also met earlier that month at 2 and 9, so 0.182.
The
And
times
only
they are changing.
four,
Yeah.
14 of the previous 122 league meetings had been at 250 or lower.
Wow. Times they are changing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
Um,
there'd be more than 14 because let's face it, they were both rubbish for a long period of
Yeah,
time.
particularly, yeah, that's true. Yeah, late 1990s,
Mm,
particularly 2000. Maybe not at the same time. Maybe not at the same
mm,
time when Newcastle were rubbish, Leicester were okay. When Leicester were rubbish, Newcastle were just kind of getting there. But anyway, yeah. I mean, the first, it's roster. It's kind of silly season roster time.
I've got another, before you go into the roster, I've got another stat for this one. Menzies was the anomaly in the game, obviously, as the one proper centre
Yeah,
in the game. He was starting,
he
so
can
too
play the
was,
proper centre, but he's undersized.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He was starting, so too was Carey, Battle making his home debut. So this is the fourth different starting lineup of the season for Leicester. They only had three different starting lineups in the whole of last season.
Wow. Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's not the name on the front of the shirt that wins you games. It's
Mm,
the players inside them.
yeah, yeah.
And I had a quick look. Charles Thompson is 6-0 in German BBL at the moment,
Mm, mm,
or 4-0 in German BBL and 2-0 in Europe Cup or Europe Cup, whatever they're playing. And obviously Zach Jackson is doing whatever Zach Jackson's doing as well. So you don't replace those guys. And the basketball in October is never as good as the basketball in May
mm,
or the basketball last May, because the teams are less aware of each other. But I mean, this is by probably Leicester more than anybody have rather been stuffed by the change in the format, whereby these
mm.
are trophy games. Last year it would have been somebody else. Last year London would have struggled because London were pretty poor, if you remember.
Yeah, yeah,
But they have the
yeah,
trophy games to get through them.
yeah.
So it does actually
Probably wouldn't have won the league.
probably wouldn't have won the league. No, so the structure of the whole thing kind of does make a difference. Um, and people will say, well, hang on, I mean, obviously Carey has come out of New Zealand and he's a experienced player and he's good.
Mm,
He's so why didn't they sign Carey in the summer? Well, Carey probably wasn't available in the summer.
mm,
You know, um, why with Newcastle with Hammond? I don't think Newcastle would have got a guy who played 2 years in German BBL in the
mm,
summer unless because he's at that point they're not willing to accept the money that
mm.
um, that teams are able to offer then. But when they haven't got a job in October, it's a bit different.
Yeah, yeah.
The market changes, and I continue to remind people, even the year we were the best team we ever had, we changed a player after a game.
Mm,
We brought Andre Jones instead of Ricky Taylor. So,
mm,
changes come with it. And obviously Leicester have now made three and Newcastle have made two with, and with Jack Verhoeven as well. And this is because the coaches are looking forward and thinking, I don't want to be this way all season.
mm,
Right? Not necessarily because the games they've already seen. They're projecting forwards to what they need. Now, what Leicester needed was another lead guard,
mm,
and they found one, because Carey did in this game what every true good professional is meant to do, which is when you've been a pro for a while, you come into a new club, you set your mark,
mm,
you make your mark. You say, I'm here. And he did that in the first quarter. Now, obviously, they have the benefit of Newcastle having basically scouted him because they don't know he's there.
mm,
There's some mitigation from Newcastle in that perspective. It's not a guy that they're able to get any idea of or who should be guarding him and what he is. But he's a big guard. He seemed to fit. He can shoot and he seemed to fit right into their system. Didn't force anything,
mm,
which was quite apart from the three at the end of the first quarter, which he had to, which was quite impressive. Um, Eagles, obviously, as you say, I don't imagine when they released Reed and brought in Hammond that they did it thinking there'd be a player down this weekend.
mm,
Assume that they thought that they'd be ready to go this weekend. So one assumes that's something to do with international clearance or something like that, which is again something that's very much out of the control of clubs.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's that you can't. It's a foreign federation, and Hammond played in I think Germany last year. Foreign federation has to release it and you have to make payments have to go through the governing body, our governing body, whatever. So whilst they were down on numbers, and obviously Ward Hibbert is a loss, for
mm,
that period of time because he's a British player, so he's very difficult to replace. And they wouldn't have expected to be that far down in numbers. But I think they made that move because ultimately, um, with Defoe, as you say, Darius will be back in the next week or so, I'm pretty sure.
mm,
And with if Hammond comes on the market, a player of his apparent caliber, then you've got to lose an American.
mm,
And I think they've probably formed the view that we can't have a situation where we've got at times three centres sitting on the bench.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, is Reed, Smith is effectively a five, and Canway, and then
Mm,
Darius as well. So therefore, you've got to get a little bit smaller. You've got to get a bit more shot creation, so you don't have Taylor and Jack having to do the bulk of the scoring.
mm.
So I got that move as well. It just didn't work out for them in this game because he wasn't able to play. And on top of that, and obviously Defoe's not quite ready yet.
Yeah.
So they may have to go through a little bit of pain this week to deal with it.
So Menzies scored. Battle hit two threes. Carey another. It was 11-0 after 2 minutes. Eagles scored a timeout before they'd scored. They did steady the ship a little bit, cutting it to 18-10, but Leicester's offense was flying. A five for Evie, four for Bournemouth. Rafe Johnson hit a three. Carey hit a ridiculous one on the buzzer. They were 7 of 11 from behind the arc in the first quarter. And having averaged 69.8 points per game this season, they scored 39
Yeah.
in the first quarter, their best since 2019,
I mean,
April
they came
2019.
out, as they had to really because ready to play because they were 0 and 4.
Mm,
On top of that, they came out with a SLB rotation.
mm,
I don't think they've had an SLB rotation so far this season
mm,
with the players that they had, um, and without any distractions, which is
mm,
basically Menzies instead of Shelton. Now,
mm,
obviously, Martin isn't playing, so that gives them another body, and that'll restrict Menzies probably to minutes off the bench. But what they did really well, and this is where it hurt Newcastle because Newcastle started Camway, and Camway's a young centre, a young British centre, so it's good to see him playing. It's good to see, if you're going to release an American, play a young British kid. And against London, he was impactful off the bench,
yeah, he
played
was.
minutes, he was plus 17 in the game. Leicester's offense basically dissected Newcastle, and it dissected them because when Camway was in the game, Newcastle basically were hedging risk screens, hedging and recovering, and they weren't able to. Big bit because Leicester's ball movement was too quick. So the very first play of the game, as you say, Menzies got a layup on the screen where Camway comes up to hedge, which basically means kind of soft pressure on the ball handler. That's what a hedge is, soft pressure, designed to make the ball handler pick the ball up so the other guy can, the proper defender can get back on his man. And then Camway is meant to retreat back to the big guy, yeah? But in the first play, he probably overhedged and didn't get back and meant he's got an uncontested layup at the rim.
Mm,
And what that then means is the next two or three times down, the guy, because Leicester have got two guys in the corners, yeah?
mm,
They're battling the corner and whoever else is in the corner, maybe Acott or somebody. So the next time, the two Newcastle defenders who are defending those guys in the corners, the next time they run the same screen and roll, those Newcastle defenders are helping a little bit more to stop Menzies because they're not sure Canway is going to be back there.
mm,
Problem is, when you help a little bit more, that means you're in rotation because you've also got to be able to get out to the shooters.
mm,
And then they were on their heels. They didn't get out to the shooters. Battle is not the guy you leave. I'm sorry. Acott beats me from the wing. I'll live with it, but not Battle.
mm,
Right? And because of that, Newcastle are out of kilter defensively, and Leicester's ball movement means that they get open threes. And to be frank, that was the pattern of the whole first half.
mm,
And when they got, I think they had 20 assists in the
mm,
first half. So the ball was doing the work, right? So it was great offense, but also the defense didn't work. And it's a pattern of what Newcastle have been so far this season. They've been really good when they've been small and they've switched everything. And a switch basically means there is no hedging and recovering. So a big guy goes on the little guy, and the little guy goes on the big guy. That's what they did with London most of the time, and with Sheffield most of the time. But it's harder to do that with Canway because if you put Canway in the game, then he's going to have to guard a guard, and that's tough for a guy at his level of his development. It was easier to do it with Reed because Reed was a little bit more mobile. So they went to the hedge and recover, and Leicester absolutely dissected it.
mm,
Offensively, at the beginning of the game, Newcastle are a problem because that's three quarters in a row whereby the first quarter, the third quarter, and the first quarter against Leicester, against London and Leicester, they haven't scored a bucket in 3 minutes. And
mm.
I think it was 11-0 before Maceo Jack touched the ball.
Yeah.
I mean,
It-
they need to find a way of establishing easy offense earlier because they got nothing easy in the game. They were on their heels. And in reality, whilst we don't think of it like this because the narrative of the game is set by the score that we're looking at on the screen at all times,
mm,
in reality, the 11-0 run and then the 7-0 run at the beginning of the third quarter,
mm.
they're the game.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like against London, the 10-0 run and the 8-0 run, 18-0 at the beginning of each first and third quarter. They are the game. And that is not acceptable because that is controllable. You should know what you're coming out with. You should know who you're guarding. And, to be fair, Stuart's GB teams have been really, really good at
Mm,
the beginning of quarters and the beginning of quarter. So, whilst I appreciate, it's a 14-point game. It wasn't a 14-point game. It was a lot more than that. Obviously, it was never in doubt the game. The reality is that the 11-0 And then the last chance that Newcastle have basically is beginning the third quarter, which is a 23-point game. Can they
Yeah.
get a run going? That the run at the beginning of the third quarter with the same problems um, take place. That was the game. And the stats again, Canway was a plus 17 against London in 12 minutes. Against Leicester, he was a minus 26 in 15
Mm.
minutes.
Mm.
That means in the 15 minutes that they didn't have a quote marks a true centre on the court,
Yeah, yeah,
albeit some of those the numbers are a bit skewed by the run at the end. I get that, but
yeah.
those 15 minutes they were plus 12. So they have a balance to find in relation to whether they have whether they have the capabilities to get into rotations defensively. Top of that, and a lot of things went wrong in the first quarter. I mean, they lost Clark to 3 fouls, and Clark. I think they might. If I was, I'd be thinking about starting Clark because I think they're better with Clark and Taylor. I think the ball moves better. I think the team just looks a little bit more natural with that. But obviously they've got Hammond to come in, so we'll see how that fixes.
Mm.
Leicester looked like a proper SLB team down.
Mm.
Suddenly Spencer Johnson, who's been pretty horrible this season,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shooting
suddenly
numbers are awful.
suddenly he's coming off the bench. He's not the main option, and suddenly he's 7 and 9. And he fits back. He fits into a role. I mean, it's interesting what Rob's done because he's basically stocked up on. He gets 6 Americans, yeah. He's stocked up on four guards.
Mm.
Basically, he's got AV, Battle, Carey, and Johnson. And Johnson started at the two guard last year.
Mm.
So he's started up with. He's decided I haven't got a Connor, but I can't. But our team is based around ball movement. He's got good size at the guards as well with Battle and Carey, which helps. But our team is based around ball movement and penetration, and as such, I'm going to need a phalanx of these guys.
Mm.
So then he's still got a little bit of a hole at the four, which you're kind of doing it by committee. So a little bit of Acott, a little bit of Nduku, a little bit of Sulaiman. Yeah. And I'm not sure which one of those guys is, who are all capable. They're all a little bit undersized, but they're all capable. I'm not sure which one of those guys is going to kind of make that role his own. But he's decided rather than going for an American four, which is what they had when they brought O'Neill in and he didn't come,
Mm.
they've not replaced him directly. He's instead decided, no, I need to stock up in the backcourt because ultimately in the SLB, backcourts win games. And I think that's exactly why Newcastle have basically swapped the centre out for a wing.
Yeah, yeah,
With also that with the rider that obviously they've got a lot of games, European games coming, and Ward Hibbett's going to miss a lot of them.
yeah.
So
Mm.
when you've got Ward Hibbett, you've got another 6'5" wing who's going to play you 25 minutes a game. You can kind of platoon your centres, so your centres just play energetically, and you just swap them around, swap them in and out. But when you're without that extra wing player, then they've been putting a heck of a lot on to Taylor and Jack. And I'm talking a lot about the teams because the game really wasn't much to
Yeah,
talk.
no, I've got nothing else. I
Sorry.
mean, Taylor and Long made some inroads into the deficit in the second half. You mentioned they had did they score last 7, 9 points, something like that, Newcastle to make it.
Well, yeah, I mean, long at 90. I mean, it's interesting thing with Newcastle's starters because last year they had a bunch of guys who were quite happy to be the guy.
Mm.
I'm talking about Akaru at the end, Pulliam, Knight, Alan Aikens.
Mm.
None of them were shy away from being the guy. Um, this team has a bunch of guys who quite like the game to come to them, I think.
Mm.
So Taylor's a new kind of point guard, so he's trying to get his teammates involved. So you're not going to expect him to come off the bat and score the ball aggressively. Canway's a rookie centre, so he's just going to finish what he can. So then you've got to look for some of your wings for offense. Anthony, again, is a kind of a guy who seems to wait to see what the game's going to give him. He doesn't go out and grab it. And Long was passive in the first half. When he was aggressive in the second half, he made a massive difference.
Mm.
So they have to, and Jack in this game just was off. I mean, and it hurt himself, which is potentially ruinous. But
Mm.
he just wasn't, he was just off. He just wasn't what he had been. But they have to find a way of finding somebody in that starting unit who is going to be the pivotal figure at the beginning of the games. We always used to throw the ball at Darius first 3 times down.
Mm.
You'd literally try you would try and establish something easy and early. And I didn't think they did that. I don't think they've done that the past 3 games. That offense has been, the starting lineup hasn't worked. But yeah, Leicester have just been stuffed up by the system, I'm afraid. They're going to they're a lot better now than their record. And to be frank, yeah, I think also a word for Kande as well. Kande played 20 minutes in this game, and probably for the first time, there weren't times where I thought, oh, that's a problem. He played defense. He got steals. He didn't shoot the ball much, but he's not there to do. He's not expected to do that. He shoot if he's open. And, I don't imagine Newcastle 3 weeks into the season were expecting sort of a Kante who's going to be playing 20 minutes in a game like
No,
that.
no.
He's 11th man, and so there was a little bit of mitigation. I'm a little bit, there's some silly posts on the Eagles Facebook page about this, that, and the other, oh, this rubbish and all this stuff, and they didn't try and all this stuff. No, they just got beat by a better team and who
Mm.
were ready to play,
Desperate.
who needed to win, who were
Yeah,
desperate
yeah,
to win, who had a new guy who was playing against the Eagles. His new guy wasn't playing,
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a good. What I will say, it's a good. Menzies helps them. I don't think he helps them as much as people will think he does. I think he'll be coming off the bench, but he's certainly a more solid, predictable option than Shelton.
Yeah.
And I think with the team that they've got, I don't think Rob needed unpredictability.
Mm,
I think that he will assist. And to be fair to Menzies in this game, his passing out the role was good.
mm,
He only had 4 points, but um, he does give up some with quickness issues. But his kind of mid-roll passing, where he was able to throw the ball at the corners and that
yeah,
type
yeah.
of
It's
shots for
good.
everybody else, was really good. And that's so important. If you've got a big guy who can do that, the ball goes through his hands. That means that the wings can get set and know where the ball's coming from. So yeah, they've performed a decent rescue act on that roster.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think they're quite as good as the first half. I don't think they're quite. I mean, only shot 2 of 13 from three in the second half.
Mm,
So I thought the second half they were pretty average, but they didn't need to be any more than that.
mm,
Um, so offensively, we'll see. I mean, they had 39 points in the first quarter and then 38 in the next two.
mm,
So in reality, if Newcastle come ready to play and at the very least able to defend the 3-point line in the first quarter, and I'd praise them for that against London and basically criticise them for that against Leicester, then they may have been able to keep it close, but it was never a contest.
no. Carey, 19.6 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 of 6 threes. Not a bad debut, that. Battle, 19.6 rebounds, 5 assists. Johnson, you mentioned 7 of 9, 15.7 rebounds. Leicester had 28 assists in the end. Bearing in mind they made 34 field goals and 14 free throws. That's 40 odd shots, isn't it? And
Well,
got
it is. It's
28
pretty
assists.
good, and to be honest, that's the biggest encouragement for Leicester. I think is Carey and Battle's assist
Mm,
because they're both. I think looking at them, guys who are more comfortable scoring. I
mm,
don't know about Carey. I've only seen one game, so it's probably a bit early, but are very comfortable scoring, if I can put it
mm,
that way. Not going to turn
mm,
down a shot. And for guys like that, for players like that, you want them to have a balance of being able to score and pass.
mm,
And Battle, 5 assists for Battle is really quite important because he's a bona fide scorer.
mm.
So if he's also sharing the basketball, that means they've got something good going. Yeah.
Taylor, 19.6 assists. Long, 19.17 of them in the second half. 9 rebounds. Clark, 10 points and 5
Yeah, you
assists.
get the impression that Long holds himself back a little bit. He's not necessarily comfortably kind of being thrust into the main guy role, and that's kind of why he fitted so well last year with some of the players who were very comfortable
Mm.
fitting into said role. The other thing is, I mean, Taylor for a rookie point guard is doing pretty well.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
He
absolutely.
looks like he belongs. He's kind of the shot selection was a bit iffy in his first two games, but the games against London and Leicester, he looks like he belongs and he looks like he's got a little bit of toughness about him. So, rookie point guard is a hard job in this league. It's a
Mm.
very, very hard job coming out of college into this league. But I think they've got one to keep there. So we'll see.
So that means everybody in the league has a win on the board, which is the fourth earliest that has happened by
How's
games,
about the other three, Dan?
the games played. So in 2021, it was somewhere between 15 and 18 games, obviously 3 games on the same day. In 2006, 7.
Need minutes of conclusion.
Yeah, I don't do the end of games. I just do the
Uh,
days. In 2006, 7, it was between 17 and 19 games. 89, 90, it was 18 and 21 games, and then this year was 19 to 20 games.
that's
That's still
so
good.
we've got a league which has a little bit of parity about it.
Yeah,
Probably outside of London, you would say. Um, London had a great win against Trento, by the way. I mean, they were up
yeah,
30
yeah.
first half against
Mm,
Trent. And so they have to be absolute favourites to win the league, but given that they don't think winning the league's very important, it doesn't really matter, does
mm,
it? Everybody else, you're going to have games which are going back and forwards, and health of players is going to be important. What type of rosters can you put out? And roster construction is going to be important. And as I say, I think that's why these moves have been made. I mean, I think Bristol are pretty much set. I don't see that much of them changing. Caledonia, they've they've there's reasons to stick with Caledonia's roster and there's reasons not to.
Mm.
So that will be a judgment call for the coach to see if he can upgrade in any way, if he needs to upgrade. Newcastle, think we're probably through now. Sheffield, I think, are pretty comfortable with what they've got, subject to them all being healthy. They should be. Obviously, Manchester released Cody John and they brought Osimhen in. So you'd think that they're pretty much done once Jordan Johnson, the backup point guard, kind of integrated himself in the last game. So you wouldn't think there would be much coming from Manchester. Surrey only played 3 games, very early to tell. The coach will know better than we do. But they might need another body.
Mm.
Um,
London just brought in a new guy to cover for Reynolds being out injured.
did they really? Yeah, there you go. Happy days. Well, they've had the Lithuanian guy playing SLB. Obviously, the rules are they can only play 4 imports. So they just basically whistled up to a Lithuanian factory and produced a basketball player. Um, which they probably didn't really need to do, but there you go. So they brought another guy in, and there is somebody else I didn't mention, but and yeah, Cheshire I think are pretty much set, subject to given Rideau's shot the last week. I think they're pretty much set. I think
Yeah.
Rideau was a question mark on that team, um, and given that Diggins, who's the other question mark, played 35 minutes last week and played really well. I don't think, I think obviously they've seen quite a lot in him as well. So any moves that they make are going to be around the edges as well.
Mm.
So I think, it's basically Leicester who made the main moves with the 2 new guys. Newcastle have tried to up their talent level with Hammond, and Caledonia probably have some decisions to make. But it doesn't mean you've got to make a decision. It
Mm.
might be a decision not to make a decision because there's not that much wrong with them. But it's going to be a long season if they're giving up 95 every game. That's the issue.
Cheers.
That's the league in a nutshell. Anybody wants any specific advice? My rate is on the club call number,
Yeah. Oh eight nine
uh,
eight.
0898, and I'll get to you at the end.
Yeah. So I don't think anything happened during halftime in SMB this week, apart from a change of outfits. Let's move to today's games. Sunday, Cheshire Phoenix 91, Newcastle Eagles 85. Hammond in for his debut. Change to the starting lineup for Newcastle. Taylor and Camway off the bench. What did you make of that first of all, Dave?
Firstly, Stuttle kind of made me look good, didn't he? Because I suggested not so long ago that I thought Clark might actually start,
Yeah.
and he did. Now, that was not there was no prior knowledge of that.
Mm,
So that you have to accept that. I could have got a text about it, but no, I didn't.
mm,
I didn't think he'd start for Taylor, to be
mm,
honest. I thought he might start with Taylor as opposed to for Taylor. I thought maybe Anthony might come off the bench. But nevertheless, I think they are a more direct. They have more direction with Clark on the court,
mm.
certainly early on in games. Just his kind of his busyness, the way he runs it, he really runs a team. He's probably what you'd describe as kind of an old style point guard. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
And there was none of the 11-0 down. There wasn't
Um,
actually much in the first quarter. It was a late Eagles 5-0 run that gave them the lead,
Yeah, and he
18
scored
24.
28 points, and yeah, but as you say, it started Smith, I think, instead of Camway,
Yeah.
and brought Camway off the bench, and obviously you've got Hammond to come off the bench. Cheshire started Rideau, didn't start Robinson, probably slightly fortunately for them. Rideau got 2 early fouls, which allowed
Mm,
them to get Robinson in the game early, and Robinson was a game breaker in this game.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there wasn't much in it. It was a relatively, I thought, well played game. It was quite a normal game for Ellesmere
Mm,
Port.
yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't. I thought Newcastle did a fairly good job of keeping Cheshire out of their game, in relation to threes and in relation to transition, and they basically did that by making Cheshire score one-on-one.
Yeah.
Because Cheshire only had 10 assists on 91 points,
Yeah.
but the problem was they scored enough on one-on-one.
Yeah.
Robinson
Yeah.
Robinson was like 13 or 14 of 19, and that was enough. So it was yeah, it was kind of an unusual game. There wasn't the kind of the massive spurts that you get at Cheshire, where it's
No.
12 and 12
No.
there. You guys commented it stayed close throughout.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So Robinson had 8 in a 10-0 run that had Cheshire in front 41-40 with 3 to go. He had 16 in the first half. There wasn't a basket between the teams from the end of that run until the end of the third quarter. It wasn't more than a basket. There was obviously baskets being scored, but
yeah,
there was never more than 3 points, put it that way, between the teams until basically the end of the third quarter when a Brenchley three made it a 6 point game, 68
yeah,
62.
yeah. And Newcastle had chances. Newcastle, I think Newcastle would probably think this game actually got away a little bit because it was there for them. I thought in relation to, as I say, outside of Rideau and Robinson, Cheshire was 66 or 17 on threes.
Mm,
You live with Rideau and Robinson's threes.
yeah.
So outside of that, they held them at 17 3-point attempts. Um, they missed a ton of chippies. I mean,
Mm,
it was 1 of 8 in the first half and 12
yeah.
and didn't play in the second half. So,
No.
and these and they weren't shots that he can't make.
No.
There was a layup, there was like 8 footers, there were shots he's been making routinely for 10 years.
Yeah.
And not because he's got some behemoth SLB guy guarding him as opposed to some little Division One guy. The shots
Yeah.
he just didn't make them.
Yeah.
Anthony was 2 of 9, and ultimately, if two of your main American big guys are 3 of 17, then you're leaving a lot of points out there. And
Yeah.
Cheshire in that gym, you probably got to score in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even on a slowish game, even on a game where they weren't flying, you're giving up. They are playing such an offensively minded brand of basketball, and basically give it and attacking quickly and giving the ball to scorers that you've got to go in the 90s, and they didn't get there because I think ultimately they missed a few chippies. Um, so yeah. Um,
Decisive run of the game came 5 minutes ago. It's 75-74, but then an unsportsmanlike on
I
Hammond,
mean,
which Robinson converted. Then he hit a three on the possession, and then White hit a three a couple of minutes later to
yeah,
cap a
I mean
10-0 run to 85-74.
that was a tough one for Stu because I was thinking during the get in the fourth quarter, I was thinking I would bring Hammond back in here because Anthony was struggling.
Mm,
Anthony struggled. He played 32 minutes in that game, and he was struggling to score the ball or get to his spots. Um, and so you think, well, you've got this new guy on the bench, you can clearly play because the first shot he made coming off the screen was like, oh, hang on,
mm,
that was a high level play. It wasn't an easy shot, and you think we're going to get him in. Of course, Hammond's not practiced
mm,
with that team. He got there 9 o'clock on Friday morning, apparently. Yesterday, I know they did a minor shoot around because I actually went across to the Newcastle University game against Milton Keynes,
mm.
which was undoubtedly the best game of the weekend, a double overtime thriller, 128, 123, whatever. But he's not practiced.
Mm,
And therefore you can't really expect him to be entirely up on the scouting report. So he does bring him in, he makes that call, which is fair enough. But then what happens is that Hammond decides he's going to pressure Robinson at the half court line.
mm,
That's not the way you need to be guarding Robinson. When Robinson goes past him, he tried to, commit a foul in order to kill, to kill his mistake. But unfortunately, the foul was too late
mm.
and too egregious and too up because there was a second hand involved.
Yeah.
Which meant that not only it was an and one unsportsmanlike.
Mm,
And that's what you lose with somebody who's not been there.
mm,
You put in that's why it's hard to play people who aren't there. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't on that one. Um, then there were a couple of other plays which they could have got back. I think Newcastle made a little run after the run you're talking about.
So they did get it to 4, but they never got it back to a single
They got
possession
it
game
back to 4, and then it went
on a
out to
long
6.
three.
And then Maceo Jack had a wide open three.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was a kind of a game, that shot had to go. And he didn't really look right to me in that game. He looked like
no.
he was a bit gimpy.
It it, it was weird because obviously he sort of tweaked his ankle in the Leicester game, but
Yeah.
his mechanics didn't quite look right to me. The
Mm.
way because he has quite a smooth shot and it
Yeah.
just looked a little jerky, which wouldn't be an ankle thing, but
No,
it
there was
was
a couple
just
of,
something not quite right, I thought.
yeah, I know what you mean about a shot. I was surprised when I saw it, but I think that's something he's come up with over last year, I think, because
Okay.
that's the way, because his foul shots are like that as well.
Yeah.
Foul shots are a bit strange. But there's a couple of times he ran back down the court and I thought he's a bit gimpy.
Mm,
Just the first 3 steps down off his ankle. So I don't think he was entirely right, but he was out there playing, so good for him.
mm.
I thought Cheshire did what they were meant to do on the home court. Um, Obviously as I say, the in comparison with the game I watched at the arena 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, Rideau was far more under control
Mm.
insofar as he wasn't just barreling people who were trying to make a point. But he only played 16 minutes. This is
Yeah.
Robinson's team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's be, for all the Quincy made the shot last year, and he's there and he's gonna do his thing. This is Robinson's team at the moment, because he's the guy that Newcastle couldn't get a handle on, and they didn't really. The first couple of possessions they guarded him, forcing him to his right, but after that they kind of forgot about it.
Mm.
And then if you do send him to his right, a couple of times he's able to spin back left, and there was no help coming. And it's tough to help against Cheshire because of all those threes on the perimeter. So what you give up,
Mm.
but you can't give up layups to a guy who makes a living off making layups, and you
Mm.
can't give up 14 and 19. And ultimately that. And the Eagles missed 8 foul shots. Cheshire missed 5 foul shots. So there's a little bit there as well. So yeah, interesting game. The I'm talking a little bit more about Newcastle and Cheshire because Cheshire appear to have righted the ship and they appear to be quite. I mean, they've had 3 home games as opposed to 3 away games they had.
Yeah.
And a lot of all this is schedule
Yeah.
dependent
Yeah. Yeah.
because even the games that Newcastle have lost, they've lost to um, Sheffield away, London at home, Leicester away, and
Leicester
Cheshire
away,
away.
Cheshire away. Yeah.
That's a tough stretch when
Yeah. Yeah.
you're bringing out players and you've lost your experienced British guy. So is there a reason for Newcastle to panic? Probably not. Do they need to make further tweaks? They might need to. We'll have to wait and see. But I think
I think there are not many teams that are going to be over 500 away from home this year.
I
So
think you're probably right. And it's also not many teams that are going to be over 500 at home against London.
no, no.
So there we go. So yeah, so it's where you look at it. The other thing you mentioned on the Canway, a 22-year-old British kid, a rookie, and it's against Cheshire, who don't really have a centre. So that's a team you really should be beating up on because Skylar's a stretch five and Diggins is a four basically, and in Zona's kind of a five, but he's still a stretch really. But nevertheless, you have to say that he played really aggressively and
Yeah.
offensively, and that's the hardest thing for rookie bigs, for British bigs. The hardest thing is offense because if you can't score, you're not going to be able to play.
Mm.
That's why Smith didn't play in the second half because he couldn't put the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
And if he's got the ability to finish, and you had a left hand hook and a right hand hook, he blew one layup which you can't miss, and that gave away a transition three at the other end.
Mm.
Little things like that make a difference when you're dealing with young players. But
He knocked down his foul shots as well, to be
knocked
fair
down
to
foul
him.
shots.
Yeah.
So if you've got a young British kid who puts up 16 points in 14 minutes, and he's being limited because of I think probably his conditioning and also his defensively, he's not great on switches. So it's tough to put him out there against Cheshire all the time. But he earned his minutes going forward. So that's a positive thing to look at. And sometimes it needs, and this is the argument against import. This is the argument in relation to imports, of course, isn't it? This is
Mm.
the argument of how many imports you need because it needs Reed to get cut
Yeah. For
for
him
him
to
to
get
get
the
that,
small
him
mark.
to get
Yeah.
that, him to play more.
But I mean, I'm not going to try and read the mind of Mark, but it also might be the minutes that he played against London
Yeah,
made it easier to make the decision of actually we're going to get Hammond instead of Reed.
yeah, I'm sure that's right. And on top of that, with knowing that hopefully you're going to get the fullback in the near
Yeah.
future, so you're going to get
Yeah.
15 minutes a game out of him as well.
Yeah.
Then the question is, do we have more need at the wing position or the centre position?
Mm.
Well, with Ward Tibbett out until January,
Yeah.
then it puts a lot of scoring onus on Taylor and Jack if you haven't got anybody else. So we'll see. Cheshire, I think, yeah, we know what they are now.
Mm.
We got to see how they do on the road because obviously they had 3 really tough road games to start the season.
Yeah.
Now they've had three nice schedule of Sunday
Yeah.
home games to get comfortable with each other, and now they're going to have to. I assume at some point they're going to have to go back on the road,
Mm.
and that will separate, as you say, that will separate the team. Any team is what 32 games in the league this year, so any team who wants to win 20 games is going to have to be pretty good on the road,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's going to be hard to win 20 games, I think, outside
Yeah.
of.
Robinson, a point shy of his career high, 31 points, 13 of 19. He was from the floor. White, 12 points and 6 rebounds. Diggins, 11 points and 6 rebounds. Canway, 5 of 7 for 16 points. Long, 6 of 7 for 15 points. Jack and Clark both had 14. Hammond, by the way, had 6 points in
Yeah, it's those other
16.
guys. You see, I see that's why Smith's got to make his layups, and
Mm,
because of long 6 or 7, but Smith and Anthony have 17 shots between them. Cameron's
yeah,
5 or 7. Sometimes it's where the ball goes that matters,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and how easy is it to create shots.
Mm.
So yeah, there we go.
So let's go to the bizarre game that when we decided to split it up like we did, we both
Yeah.
thought this game was at 4 o'clock, but it
Mhm.
wasn't. It was at quarter to 6 at
Because quarter to 6 is such a logical time for a
yeah,
basketball
yeah.
game.
At
Not quar- We're not going to do it at past 5. That's too
yeah,
early. Certainly not going to do it at 6 o'clock because that's too
too
late.
late. Yeah.
What?
Uh,
What?
and also it was Hackney. So I've not seen at New City College, is it?
New City College.
New
It's
City College. I've not seen any of this game. Obviously,
right.
that's a bizarre venue to be playing in. I've seen photos of that venue. It's not very big.
Well, it was a bit strange because the floor looked great. It had the light
Yeah,
logo on. It's a wooden floor, and obviously we've all played on,
yeah, yeah.
anything but wooden floors in the dim and distant past. When I was around,
Mm,
if you went to Manchester, you got to play on a green floor. You went to Sheffield occasionally, you got to play on that blue court.
yeah. John
Um,
Sanford up and down on the
on
broken
Sanford up
wood.
and down on that, yeah. So we can't complain about that. But I mean, what was weird to me was that there were bleacher seats that were clearly there, but they hadn't pulled the bleachers out.
Somebody told me they're broken. You
They're
can't
both
pull them
right.
out. Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
that is that an allegory for this SLB or what? I'm sorry, we were going to go and play. We
Uh,
can't pull the bleacher. So all they had was chairs on the floor, which was
yeah,
big. Made it look like Newcastle University
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah,
I
yeah.
watched the BCB game against Milton Keynes.
For the
Um,
debut of a former NBA player.
for the debut of a former NBA player who I just Googled. Yeah, he was a former NBA player and won EuroLeague with Real Madrid.
Mm, mm.
I hate to say it, but that kind of puts things in perspective as to where we are on the old Death March scale, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Only
Just
in for temporary cover.
3 months until Reynolds is back
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, but yeah, but I mean, what it means is that one assumes that someone like that, and I don't know what his recent history has been. I don't know if he's in the tail end of his career, but it's kind of a Jordan Taylor-esque situation, isn't it?
Mm,
Um, you assume that someone like that's not coming for a pittance.
mm,
You assume that's going to probably knock 50 grand out of their budget,
mm,
and that's not money that anybody else has to spend at this part of the season.
no,
And against that, to then play a game in front of 150 people, which is what it looked like to me.
yeah.
I don't think there was any on the camera side of the court. And to play a game in front of 150 or 200 people, it doesn't sit overly well with us. Then it's,
Did,
if you
did,
have
did I give the score to this, by the way? It was
sorry.
81-73, London
Um,
over Caledonia.
yeah, it just doesn't sit. Yeah, we'll get to the game, but it just
Mm,
doesn't sit that well with us that they made that decision. Of course, it's an absolute indictment on the lack of appropriate facilities in
yeah,
London.
yeah,
You've got a
yeah,
choice between 7,000 and 150.
yeah,
Or 300. I mean, what does that say about
yeah, yeah.
indoor sports facilities in the capital? And I'm not. And then even over the past 7 years, I'm actually not anti-London. Never have been
Mm,
anti-London. I'm not parochial enough to realize that there are a lot of good things that are coming out of what they do. And now they've got, again, young players, young British players who, because they're restricted on imports to four because of their budget, who are playing substantial minutes.
mm,
In theory, should be getting better. So that's all well and good, but I don't know that this was probably a little bit of a step too far for me. I think it's kind of an admission that we can't do this the way that we want to do it. If you've got a Euro Cup style team, every game should be an event.
mm,
Right? If you're saying, oh, well, we can't fill the gym on a Thursday and a Sunday, right? Then you're not showing much faith in your product and you're putting enough money, you're putting a lot of money into the team when you need to put a bit more money into your
mm.
into your event.
I mean, I'm assuming it's a copper box issue, but I
So,
wonder why it couldn't be found a date later in the
no,
year.
I was told, well, certainly what was suggested to me was that, well, what I've read online, and so it might be bollocks, was that, there's nothing on at the Copper Box this weekend. It was a concern as to selling tickets.
All right.
Literally a concern as to that. Because you're right, there'd be no reason why the game couldn't be put off till later on. I mean, we've already talked, we're 6 games down on last year.
Mm,
There's a rule now, and I went through the rules the other day. And the rules have changed to a certain degree in relation to that. There are no back. The reason we're getting these short weekends is because there are no back-to-backs permitted anymore.
Oh right, I didn't read that bit.
So no, no. If you go down, that's out. In the past, it used to be that you couldn't be made to play two out of two away games in 3 days, more than once in a season or something like that. So like what Newcastle have just done.
Yeah, yeah,
You couldn't do that more than once a season, but you could play on a back-to-back, provided, and this was always ridiculous, provided that the second game was within 300 miles of the first game.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, right. I mean, that means basically, apart from Caledonia, who've got maybe three or four teams in their area. I mean, we calculated, I think that Bristol was 299 miles from
Yeah,
Newcastle.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
off you go, lad, seven
Every
o'clock.
if you're in Leicester, everywhere is 300 miles
Everywhere is
away,
that,
within 300
and it
miles
was
away.
like, it was a ridiculous rule because it didn't protect the players.
Yeah.
At all. And so, but they appear to have got rid of that and said, no, we're not doing back-to-backs, which is why we're getting fewer games on Saturdays.
Mm,
Which is why when we've had games on Saturdays, it's basically been sorry who do games on Saturdays,
mm.
but there's been sorry you haven't had any more games.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry playing Saturday night, we're not playing Friday or Sunday. Um, but yeah, but even then, I mean, it's you'd have thought it would be entirely feasible. So I'm a bit sketchy on that. The concept of, bringing in an ex-EuroLeague player, an NBA player to tide you over for 3 months to beat Caledonia
Mm,
and all these other teams, and obviously you'd be there for Euro Cup. I get that, but to do that whilst downsizing to a 150-seater gym for a game is it's not convinced.
odd.
Odd, yeah. In relation
Um,
to the game, Dan, do you want me to
let
tell you?
let me. I've not seen any of it, so
Yeah.
let me tell you what I read through the play-by-play. London started out 9-2, threes from Ragsdale, and Fag Benley tied it up at 25 early in the second quarter. 6-0 run had them back up 7:35-28. Still at 7 at half time. Allen had 20 of 38 points. He was 8 of 13 versus 8 of 18 at half time for the rest of his team.
Yeah, I mean, Caledonia is slightly more interesting than London. London kind of gave you an idea of what they thought of this game by the fact that they started Sandy and Price,
Mm,
who are basically their probably 10th and 11th men. Price is a backup centre. Obviously, Soko's not around, so he's probably the third choice centre if Soko was playing. And Sandy's the wing guy who doesn't really get off the bench in Euro Cup games. Both capable players, don't get me wrong, both very capable players, and obviously both British players. But the fact that they started the game was indicative that the coach obviously likes what they've been doing in practice. He wants to give them some reward to keep them practicing hard.
mm,
It also doesn't say that much about the level of regard or jeopardy they felt the game was on, or
mm,
even whether or not, in the grand scheme of things, if they hadn't won the game, the coach would have gone away and thought, "Oh, that's a disaster." I don't think he would have, you
mm,
know. So that was that. In Caledonia, again, Nostradamus. Toto didn't start, but it wasn't Ragsdale, it was Fraser Malcolm, I think, who
mm,
started. Um, so again, give them a little bit more offense to start with. And that takes the pressure off Toto. I think that's quite important because, there's a different mindset when you're coming off the bench. And they obviously they keep Ragsdale shoots off the bench. Um, Finally, yeah, Kevin Allen was really good in this game. What I said about on Friday, and issues about, he sat down last 4 minutes on Friday. You want to know
mm,
what you're going to get out of your player. He was really good in this game. Now, both ends, all right. Now, against that, how much of that is the fact that he's playing against guys he's suited to playing against?
mm,
Because he's got Ethan Price, he's got Jonathan Williams, he's got Mayav Joe Scott, a little bit big bodies.
mm,
Yeah. And you've got London, who don't run whatever. London's scores in the SLB are really interesting because if you look at them, they're scoring in the 70s and 80s.
mm,
They scored 72 against Bristol, just got into the 80s against Leicester, just got into the 80, maybe 81 or 82 at Newcastle, something like that. And
mm,
that's because they're controlling tempo. So there's no kind of quick actions, head down stuff from the guards. They're playing in a certain way that the coach is wanting them to play. So part of me says, Kevin Allen and Gladiators defense was so much better in this game. Part of me also thinks, is it a little bit easier to defend against London because they're playing slower,
mm,
than everybody else? So it doesn't kind of put you under as much pressure. They still pick you apart,
mm,
but they're not as spiritable as some of the other teams. Um, but again, it was a tip. It's a game you and I have seen probably 30 or 40 times in the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm,
A game whereby London, they played with the food a little bit.
mm,
Caledonia, have a nice offense. They have some shot makers. As I say, Alan was exceptional in the first half. They couldn't handle him. Um, and then Wright got going, and then you forget about Ragsdale, and he makes a shot. And Dalen Williams was probably had his most impactful game. But despite all of that, Sabonis has his depth lineup in his back pocket.
mm,
So he can go to the lineup for the last 7 minutes, last 6 minutes, and he had a Adamu in the game. But even the last 2 minutes with his two shot game, Tariq Phillip comes in the game, McGusty's in the game, Dean Williams, who he clearly trusts, and again has been very impressive. Knocked down a couple of threes in this game and attacked the rim, and just appears to be just doing the right things. Scott and Jonathan Williams. So Sandy and Price hit on in at the game at the end. So he's got that there. And I think he has confidence that those guys know how to close out games.
mm.
And unfortunately, for Caledonia, and probably unfortunately for every other team in the league, because it was similar to what happened in Newcastle when McGusty got the ball. They know where they're going. In a close game to finish. In the Newcastle game, it was a 6 point game with a minute and a half to go, and you didn't really think Newcastle could win.
Yeah, yeah.
And in this game, Caledonia game,
Same
it
sort
was
of thing. Second half, basically, I noted it never got less than one, never got more than 8 or 9, which sort of
yeah,
fits
I
your
mean,
playing with their food, sort of.
little bit, yeah, but I mean, that would be to belittle Caledonia, I think, because they're not a bad basketball team.
Mm,
They're coherent. They make good rotations. Um, they shoot the ball really well. Holland was better defensively in this game than he's been in any game I've seen, and scored the ball as well at times. They appear to play together, and Alan wore down in this game, but again, and that's why they struggled to get in the ball as much in the second half, and he wasn't quite as impactful in the second half. Um, so yeah, that would be a little bit unfair in Caledonia, but you never quite got the impression, they got down to one, and Joe Scott's made a three at the top of the key, and that's only it's four, and then there's another a dunk from or a layup from Dean Williams on the baseline, and it's six. And it's just like, we can do this when we want, that type of
mm,
thing.
mm,
And that's kind of the way I think it might be. That they're not playing fast enough to blow teams out of the gym. You've not got Matt Morgan pulling up from 25 feet in transition, or Josh Sharma running down the lane to dunk everything,
mm,
or Gabe Olaseni just basically picking people apart. They're not that team.
mm,
They're not. They're probably a third of the budget of that team,
mm.
incidentally, which was funded by somebody who's now on trial for
Yes, indeed.
fraud.
For
Let's
wire fraud, yeah, yeah.
wire fraud of X $100 million.
500, I think it
So
was.
I mean, so that they're not the budget of that team. So we're going to have some interesting games with them, but they're still very much at the kind of the everything is in London's hands.
Mm,
They can be as good as they need to be in any particular game, I think. So that's going to be tough for everybody else. So
mm,
so might be playing for the cups again in the playoffs.
mm, mm, mm.
Because in a one-off game everything's different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Scott, 17.7 rebounds. Dean Williams, 16.6 rebounds. Jonathan Williams, 14.7 of 10. Randall, by the way, 3 points in 12 minutes.
Yeah, he made a corner three. Yeah, Scott 17 and 7, you wouldn't have noticed him.
Mm,
You know, the guy puts up 17 and 7 with a minimal fuss in the easiest way. He's a good player to have.
mm. Allen, 26.7 rebounds. Wright, 15.8 rebounds. Holland, 12.
Hmm.
And we're done.
And we're done.
and we're
And
done.
no one resigned yet?
I
No?
don't. I've not heard of it,
No, no,
so
no,
I'm
no, don't
tempted to
resign.
press stop before
Don't,
anything
yeah,
moves.
don't resign on Sundays. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
suppose that's right. What's
Uh,
next week?
Next week, I think there are three games on Sunday, so we're not gonna try this.
Right,
We're not gonna
okay.
try this. It's one thing with one game. It's a totally different thing with one game. Two games when I thought I could see most
Yeah, I'm
of
thinking,
the other one, but
yeah,
I'm not trying it with three games.
fair
We'll
enough.
be Monday next week.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Well, would have been Monday this week if it wasn't. I'm going to Alton Towers tomorrow, so
Yeah, well,
that's
to be honest, it clears my mind for the week ahead.
yeah,
Not the
yeah,
worst thing. Oh,
yeah,
and sorry, one more thing, Dan. I, in all the news out of BBF and everything that's been going on,
yeah.
I absolutely neglected to correct my egregious error from.
Oh, I was told about this on Friday. I was supposed to remind you, and I
Yeah,
forgot.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereby the Sheffield table officials were entirely unfairly belittled and disparaged, when in fact it clearly should just have been the referees. Um, because remarkably, in the situation that we were talking about, where two fouls appeared on the scoreboard and nobody knew about it, and a minute later there was a correctable error and two foul shots were shot. It appears that the referees actually did call two fouls on the same play,
mm,
explained it in such a ham-fisted way that no one at the table quite understood
mm,
what had happened until it was corrected a minute later.
mm,
And when one goes back and watches the play, how anybody can get to two fouls against Spielman, given that the second foul appears to be for grabbing the ball after the whistle's been blown against him,
mm,
and it isn't an unsportsmanlike,
mm,
and it isn't an elbow, and there doesn't appear to be much, if any, contact, and the ball is already dead. So what the heck was going on?
mm.
It's absolutely beyond me. But it wasn't
All we know is it wasn't the
the
table's
table's
fault.
fault. And Forrest says, "Shut up about blaming the table."
Yeah, yeah.
Albeit, oh yeah, who knows? So yeah, and Sheffield v Surrey was due to be played today, but didn't get played. Any idea?
Oh, that was moved. I got an
Mhm.
email about that being moved like a week or more
All
ago. I
right,
think
fair
it
enough.
was. Yeah, yeah. That was
Yeah,
that.
thought all the table officials might have gone on strike.
Yeah. Until you're outed.
Until I'm out here, yeah. Until he apologises, we're all going on
Yeah.
strike.
Well, he's apologised now, so you're all right. No,
Yeah.
that game was.
Oh, incidentally, yeah, it was nice. I didn't. I wasn't going to go to the university game. Yes, I was asked to at the last minute just to do a favour for somebody. But it was interesting to see one of Scotland's most venerable referees turn up.
Oh, really?
Yes, and one of England's most venerable female referees.
Oh, right.
So Chris and Kate were there,
Yeah, that's
and
good.
John Paul was sitting courtside. So
Mm,
they haven't disappeared. It's not
yeah.
like, I think they're like these flying ladybirds, they're looking for somewhere kind of warm to come in from the dark, because we have
Mm,
flying ladybirds coming through windows, and they want somewhere warm to come in and just keep an eye on basketball. But
mm,
obviously they are still there, ready to jump out of the shadows whenever the call emerges.
mm. Well,
They,
we'll see.
they
We'll see
weren't
when
bad
that
actually,
is.
but then
Yeah,
again, it was 128, 123, and I
yeah,
think
yeah.
by the end, Chris was just wanting to get home, get
Yeah, one overtime is careless. Two
overtime to the
overtimes.
problem.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely, yeah, I was thinking that too. At 6:30, and my parking had run out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Lovely. So we'll be back next week to do it all again. As I say, it'll be Monday next week for sure. But have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.